they're going to get meaner and meaner.
Just do the beginning of each episode with him doing an impression, and that can be what starts us off for each one. Yeah. Hello all, and welcome back to Real History. I am your host, History Professor Jared Frederick, and I am joined once more by Henry Sledge, who is here to offer some personal insight and expertise, especially in relation to the depiction of his father, Eugene Sledge, one of the key protagonists in the series we are analyzing, The Pacific. So, thank you for joining us once again. And here we are, we're the home stretch going into episode 9. And in this one, as the character of your dad heads to Okinawa, he once again has to confront some very hefty moral dilemmas about how he is going to act and react in this very volatile setting. What were some things that stood out to your dad most about his time on Okinawa?
Well, the thing about Okinawa was it was so completely different from the experience at Peleliu because there were so many civilians. And my father, he wrote of it and he talked of it with me. He profoundly felt just an overwhelming sense of sadness at what the Okinawan people, who he saw as a peaceful, agrarian people living I say this with no lack of respect, a simplistic lifestyle, a peaceful life, and the gods of war descended upon them. The Japanese, of course, were horrible to them. And then the Marines and the Army land in April of 45, and it just all, they just had to feel like hell had descended on them.
Yeah. The Japanese did not view the Okinawans as full-blooded Japanese.
Right.
They treated them as a colonized people, essentially, and that just adds to the sorrow and the heartache of this chapter, is that there's so much what we would call today collateral damage of people caught in the middle.
And my father felt that profoundly, and a guy of his sensitivity and his nature, it was heartbreaking to him to see that. I mean, some great material that I was able to use for my manuscript that got cut where he spoke of it so much. And I really got a sense of what kind of person he was and how he reacted to so much of what he saw on Okinawa. And then too, we see, you can take Okinawa and just, there's so much you can do with the knowledge of that history. For anybody, we're certainly not here to moralize on the atomic bombs, but if anybody ever doubted the need for that weapon, look at Okinawa and realize that the Japanese home islands were going to be that writ large.
Yeah, many times over, in all likelihood. Well, let's reflect on some of those themes and events a little bit further as we take a look at episode 9. So the film doesn't show it, but D-Day here on Okinawa was a fairly profound day for your father because it fell on Easter Sunday. Can you elaborate on some of the significance of that and what that meant to him when he got home as well?
Well, I guess I'll answer that by giving you a little anecdote. I was probably 10 or 11 years old, maybe older, and I remember one beautiful Easter Sunday, we had gone to church, as we always did, and we came home, and I just noticed that my dad was in a very contemplative, really sad mood. He was usually a very cheerful, upbeat, ebullient guy who was quick to laugh and had a great sense of humor. And I could just tell that day that something was really weighing on his mind. And I cannot remember if With the Old Breed had been published yet or not. Honestly, don't remember. But I do remember that I asked him, what's wrong? And it was unusual for me to ask that question. That he obviously had to have been acting in a pretty subdued manner. And he told me that it was Easter Sunday, and that was the day that they had invaded Okinawa. You know, so I mean, that serves to illustrate that for the guys who went through this, you know, my father was certainly not unique in that regard. I mean, the memories of this never left them.
She's perfect. Oh, Kathy. Oh, Kathy. Porter.
So the character Kathy is actually, you know, they took a little artistic license there. Kathy was a machine gunner, and they called him Kathy because that was the name of a showgirl he had a romantic attachment to. Kathy was actually a pretty solid guy. Man, he and my dad were pretty good friends. But they took some liberties with his character here, and you know, I think Part 9 is superb in so many ways. Now here you see Snafu just pulling the old, you know, pulling a trick on the new guy, yeah. And getting his poncho and then says Semper Fi. My dad always, you know, everybody says Semper Fi. My dad always said, you know, Semper Fi was kind of an expression of disrespect, like, hey, I got mine, screw you, how you doing? Now this scene right here, this did happen. They took some liberties with this. You know, I didn't much care for the way they showed this, and then they showed the guy spit on the Japanese soldier. That when this happened and my dad wrote of it, that did not happen right there. As much as I like Part 9, I kind of wish they had not had that. But now what you see here, you know, there was a prisoner who blocked the trail and got defiant with them, and
mm-hmm. We also, in this scene, the guard who's not doing a very good job of refereeing this situation, these are actually U.S. Army troops.
Yeah.
And that's important to recognize that this is a substantial U.S. Army force. And General Buckner actually commands both Army and Marine forces on Okinawa, which is a bit of a rarity.
You had the 77th Division, the 7th Division, the 96th Division. Am I leaving somebody out? The 77th, 7th, 96th. I think I'm leaving somebody out. A huge Army presence. And of course, you had the 6th Marine Division in the 1st Division.
Hit another Japanese prisoner, I'll have you court-martialed.
You know, and of course he says, if you touch another prisoner, I'll have you court-martialed. I mean, that, you know, a K Company officer did come up there and take control of the situation. He did not threaten to court-martial my dad. But, you know, I realize they have to that particular character, I know who they're portraying, and they had to do some stuff. All right, that's my buddy Freddie Joe Farnsworth, who gave me one of his dungaree jackets that he wore on the set. Freddie Joe, of course, was a stunt coordinator. I remember Freddie telling me about how they filmed this scene, and he did not want to do this scene, and they asked him to do it because he was the only person who could yell loud enough to be heard over the LVTs and the tanks.
And of course, he is the same guy who portrays a paratrooper, comes up on a big white horse to Dick Winter's character.
Got it cleared all the way to the north of them Krauts.
Yes.
Come on, fat boy, let's go.
So he's one of the few people that shows up in both series.
And here he is portraying Lieutenant Thomas J. Stanley, Stumpy Stanley, who took K Company over after Akak was killed on Peleliu. Stumpy Stanley was a guy who, and I've told Freddie Joe this story and he absolutely loves it. But I actually talked to Stumpy a few times on the phone because he would call my dad through the years. But my dad and Stumpy got to know each other quite well. And Stumpy was well thought of. He was a different kind of officer from Akak, but he was well thought of. The ever-present star shells, and it's raining. I mean, just, you know, great depiction. And in Part 9, we see that Sledge is much farther along in the arc of his character development. You know, now he's telling the new guys how to do it because he's been there. He's a combat veteran.
Now he's the old breed.
Yeah.
Want to know their name? My name's Ham. H-A, 2 M's. Just use it to get my attention.
Ham was a fictitious character to the best of my knowledge. My father never spoke of anybody named Ham, did not write of him.
Nah, I gotta forget something.
The part with snafu, though, saying, now I have something to forget, there's a stark undercurrent to that sort of sentiment, because many of these tested veterans really had a little inclination to get to know new guys, because they thought, oh, these guys are just numbers. They're going to be cannon fodder. They don't have what it takes. They aren't going to make it. I don't want to form an emotional attachment with them because I just don't want to lose somebody who I'm friends with. So there's a dark arithmetic to a sentiment like that.
Very much so. And my father told me more than once that when he first showed up, Snafu was pretty cold to him. They obviously became good friends and worked well together, but my dad, in later years after With the Old Breed came out and Snafu read it and they reconnected, they talked about that. And he said that Snafu told him, Sledgehammer, I'd already lost so many friends by the time you showed up after Cape Gloucester. I wasn't about to get close to somebody else and go through it all again. Now, obviously that did change. But you're right, it was a dark arithmetic.
Sir, there's a dead body in there. Whole island's a graveyard. Get in your hole and start digging.
Now, what actually happened there, Duke Ellington came over when my father, everybody was like, what is that stench? And he's like, what's wrong, Sledgehammer? And he goes, well, there's a dead body right here. And Duke said, just try to move a little bit over, to dig your hole, whereas they show, I think that's supposed to be Lieutenant Mack, who really wasn't a bad officer. My father wrote extensively of him, but he was one of those who exuded that bravado. I remember my dad telling me that, that he just went on and on about what he was going to do to the first Japanese he saw, and it was all talk,
Hang it! Fuck! Misfire! Misfire!
Gives me the heebie-jeebies just thinking about sliding down a hot round the tube of your mortar. Like, oh, let's just delicately put it somewhere where no one's going to accidentally step on it.
Where do you put it?
Yeah.
It's going to get, it's...
Nice! Now, with me! You stay here!
Again, so much going on at night, and this horrible rain conditions. That was just something they dealt with on Okinawa incessantly.
He's coming in! Hold your fire! Hold your fire!
And the Japanese were merciless on this. They would implant a Japanese soldier in among a group of civilians who were moving to a rear area. There's a really cool anecdote of that I was able to put in my manuscript that got cut from With the Old Breed, but it happened a lot. This is an example of, and I'm sure it translates to any branch of the military in any time frame, any war, when a guy does something that's self-serving to make, to benefit himself, if it causes difficulties for his comrades, that is just the worst thing he could ever do. And by now, Sledge is smoking a pipe.
Am I to understand, and I read this online, you can tell me if it's true or not, and I heard it, I think, in an interview as well, your family gave the actual pipe to Joe Mazzello?
No.
No?
My mom sent one of my dad's pipes to Kirk Sadusky with a note and a pipe to Joe Mazzello. She did send a pipe to Joe Mazzello. It was not the actual pipe that my dad smoked in World War II.
I see.
But yes, my mother did send one of my dad's pipes to Joe Mazzello. That is true.
All right.
So it's like, it's mostly true, but there's
yes.
It was one of my dad's pipes, but it was not the one he smoked in World War II. I don't know what happened to that. God, if I had that, I'd be framed on the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. But I recall Joe Mazzello saying in an interview that it's among the most cherished items that he owns.
I would believe that. I mean, Joe. I wish I could have some conversations with Joe. You know, he took this role very seriously, and he brought a lot of good things to it.
Now that's a piece of ass. Be careful, that's the man's wife you're talking about.
And you know, I read that Joe Mazzello said he was kind of channeling Jimmy Stewart.
Okay.
He said, "Oh, careful, that's the man's wife we're talking about."
I like that.
Mary? Said anything about marriage?
Give her back.
Kathy Jones? Thought you said your name was Peck.
Oh, Bill Layden was just, I guess because I knew the real Bill Layden. She's not your wife. She wrote him a letter, you know, a letter. He's just, what a guy, man. I mean, and the interesting thing, Brendan Fletcher did a great job portraying him, but Brendan's a small guy, you know, like a really small guy. Bill Layden was like 6'2".
Oh, wow.
He was
okay.
a big guy.
All right.
But Brendan got the job because he just nailed it in the...
He certainly has a larger-than-life personality, if nothing else. So, Bill, in this episode, if I may be frank, really just comes off as a jerk.
He kind of does.
Is that true to life? Did he change over time? Did peacetime just make him easier? Is this fair?
I don't want to say it's not fair in the sense that, well, they didn't do their job right here. I would never say that. You know, I think, you know, Bill was from New York, and the New Yorkers, as we know, they're going to have an edge to their personality that maybe some other guys aren't going to have. Bill wasn't like that, I don't think. And certainly not to my dad. I mean, he and my dad got on very well.
Right.
If it means any damn difference, D, I'm coming with you. So grab a rifle and move.
All right, let's go. On me.
Fuck. Because you were going to get asses shot at.
You know, see, so he's, I mean, that's Snafu acknowledging that Kathy made their lives a little tougher there.
It's about time you stateside boys got to see what the war's all
Not
about.
now, Bill. We need more damn men up here. All right, let's go, move.
Now that, of course, is in reference to my father writing about looking over the side of his foxhole and seeing a dead BARman who was just, the corpse was rotting day by day. I had actually hoped they would do a little bit more with that imagery. Horrific though it is. I think it's on page 269, 270, thereabouts of With the Old Breed. And little spoiler alert for my hopefully upcoming book, I use that to great effect because it reminds me of something he and I talked about in my childhood, and I felt like that was a tie-in point.
I really enjoy the cinematography of the camera that's going down into the valley with the men. I'm guessing it's a crane shot of some manner, and it's like we're going down into the depths with them. I think it's very effective camera work.
Yeah. Some of the combat scenes in Part 9 were pretty powerful.
Stay as low as you can. Follow my lead.
Is what we see here a modified Peleliu set? Did they use these same sort of formations to film Okinawa and just modified them a little bit?
They hosed, yeah, there was some of that, but parts of Okinawa, you know, they do give you a sense of the wide open grassy plateaus of Okinawa, but there were parts of Okinawa, you know, Wana Ridge, Wana Draw, Kanishi Ridge, which of course they didn't get to Kanishi Ridge till literally the last few days of the battle. But there were rocky caves and outcroppings and formations and ridges. That kind of thing certainly existed on Okinawa.
Happy to be back, Bill?
What are we doing here?
Now, one thing I want to comment on here, I don't understand, and I've been meaning to ask Bruce McKenna this question. Nobody, till the end of this episode, even uses the name Sledgehammer. It's either Eugene or Sledge. Everybody called him Sledgehammer. I don't know why, with an iconic nickname like Sledgehammer, why it was not used more here in this part.
Civilian!
And this is a horrific example of what because right after that, then you see civilians coming down, and the machine gunner's using them as a shield.
Yeah.
Just treacherous, absolutely merciless. And treacherous.
These would have been some of the nearly 150,000 Okinawa civilians who were killed in this months-long bloodletting. Nightmarish stuff.
Nightmare stuff, and the Japanese just had no compunction whatsoever about using them to their advantage and as human shields, and it was just a war without mercy. I mean,
there's many vintage photographs of the Okinawa civilians mirroring what we see here. Just starved, famished, caked in blood and mud. There's these unfortunate people caught in the middle.
Yeah. Yes, you are correct.
Sons of bitches will just do it again. Because some asshole officer read a map wrong. And nobody gives a shit about us. There is no goddamn reason.
I almost wonder if there was a little something else that was filmed. That's a great shot.
That's one of the iconic shots of the series, yeah.
That is just a great shot of the Sledge character. But I almost wonder if there wasn't a little something else that was part of that scene that maybe got clipped out, you know, because you hear him talking about the short rounds and the FO meaning the forward observer and the RD meaning the artillery, and I don't know, you know, it's almost like, did they cut something else out? Was that supposed to be part of something else? I don't know.
In any case, that's the third or fourth time in the series where they've shown the ramifications of friendly fire.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show that there's not everything's efficient.
Yeah.
Ready? Lift.
Eugene.
Let's see, he says Eugene. You know, he in reality, he would have said Sledgehammer, but I don't know. Maybe they were trying to portray that Snafu and my dad really were pretty close at this point.
Yeah.
And this is when my dad gets the letter where my grandfather told him that Deacon had died. My dad wrote of that so eloquently, and I was able to find some unpublished material to even add some context to it.
G, my dog died. I'm sorry. They say dogs live what? 7 years to every one of ours?
And you know, here Rami just does such a great job of, because Snafu, as we've come to know him, he's kind of stepping out of his lane, because being this compassionate, like, I'm sorry, buddy, you know, that's not really Snafu, you know, but the closeness that he feels to Sledge, he's reaching to make it happen.
My brother was on the Bunker Hill.
Wow.
There's Snafu.
Emperor's God. Duty to God.
Can't fucking surrender?
I hope they don't.
You know, you just think of the lack of cleanliness right there and how bad the air would smell with just, it's miserable to be cold and wet, and on Okinawa they were cold and wet a good part of the time.
You're fucking married anyway.
Fuck you! Stop! Hey, Bill, what the fuck's the matter with you, Bill, huh? What, the Japs ain't enough? What the fuck's this about?
She wrote him a letter, you know? I love that part with Bill. And I actually don't know if Kathy's real name was Peck. I'm not sure about that. But like I said, Kathy really was a good Marine, and he and my dad were pretty good friends. Bill was a tough guy, though. I mean, God, how many times he got wounded?
Thought it'd be different.
Different from what? Books you read? Movies you saw?
No, just saying.
Grow up, Ham.
Minor quibble, you know. I wasn't a real big fan of this little interchange right here.
Does this conversation seem unlike or out of character?
It does.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, I and then of course it devolves into Sledge and Snafu just yelling at each other. I mean, if that happened, my father did not write of it. And all I have to go on is what he wrote of. I mean, I wasn't there, but I don't know, man. I don't think, I could see Snafu saying, grow up. I just don't know that my dad really would have said that. Well, the actual where he and Snafu really tie up is not there. It's later, but you see the green rubber cover for the Bible.
Summer's right around the corner, then Halloween, and then there's Thanksgiving. Look, I'm already working on your Christmas present.
I mean, what a different plane of existence, I mean,
Out of the Sticks in 46.
Hell to heaven in 47.
The Golden Gate in 48.
The Golden Gate and 48 catchphrases that we see being shared here. Some GIs had those going up into 1950 and 1951, and without any realization that there was this mega weapon known as the atomic bomb on the horizon, it is certainly in the realm of feasibility that the war would continue that long, and the slog would just commence.
Ham, get a spool.
Of course, that's pretty hard to watch right there, but he wrote of that in With the Old Breed, where a Marine would slide down a muddy slope, and he would have to take his K-bar and scrape the maggots off of him.
Sledge, where the fuck are you? Get your ass up here!
Yes, sir! I don't know. I didn't really care for that, but Sledge, where the fuck are you? I mean, but they have to show that officer as kind of being the jerk.
Here you go.
They're moving back into that ridge.
So the thought is Lieutenant Mack perhaps wasn't this insincere or as unlikable as depicted here.
Well, in With the Old Breed, my dad said that Mack wasn't a bad officer. It's just he was kind of immature, and he was a late replacement, and Okinawa was his first battle. And now what they're doing here is they're taking Mack, the guy portraying Mack, and that's a composite character.
Right.
And that the other part of that character, who's the real asshole that you just want to hate, that guy is, I think it's in the original manuscript, my dad called him Shadow, and might have called him Shadow and With the Old Breed too. But Shadow, I mean, he was such a despicable guy that my dad didn't want to use his real name.
Which was common in many World War II memoirs. People who were incompetent or disliked often received pseudonyms.
But yeah, I think what they're doing is making a composite character between Mac and then the other guy. And there really was some just abysmal behavior from that guy, which I'm able to use some material and go a little deeper into in my manuscript. We see the Japanese flag. I, of course, had the flag behind us there. My father got that flag out of the pack of a dead Japanese soldier on Okinawa.
One right here behind us?
Yes, I'll move my...
All right.
Fire! Fire!
This action here, I think, is representative of what was around what my dad called the culvert, and it was kind of in the Half Moon Hill area, which of course they don't refer to Half Moon Hill, but a lot of this action is in that area, and that this culvert guys were charging out of it, and then they're just lined up squeezing them off, and this kind of thing happened quite a bit.
Cease fire! Cease fire, goddammit! Told you to cease fire. What are you doing?
Killing Japs.
You just gave away our goddamn position.
I think they got a pretty good idea of where we are.
And then this would have been the other part of the Mac character. And my father wrote of how he would just come along the lines just berating the men and yelling at them.
I told you to cease fire. Are you supposed to be observing? I see you with the goddamn sidearm. We were all set here to kill Japs, weren't we? So what the hell difference does it make what weapon we use?
my goddamn hands if I had to.
What are your thoughts on that dialogue?
It's there were some instances where my father actually did stand up to an officer. It wasn't as visceral as that. It was not that high pitched. Not that his voice was high pitched. That much yelling. It was a little more emotionally controlled. But officers' orders were not questioned. You didn't do that. I mean, you get in a lot of trouble back then. It serves the underlying theme that they're just all to the point of their breaking point,
The order us to sit in our own fucking shit. They fucking shell us with our own artillery.
Shut
I'm
up.
so fucking tired of not having enough fucking bodies.
Jesus Christ, shut up!
Fuck you!
Shut up!
Fuck you, Sledge!
Just shut up! Shelter!
Fuck you!
Attack!
Now this little interplay right here, and I realize why they're doing this. They're doing this because, Kathy uses this as fuel to just go crazy and start shooting, and then of course he gets killed, and or no, he doesn't get killed. Ham gets killed trying to stop him. But I didn't really care for the Sledge and Snafu just yelling "F you, F you, F you," because that didn't happen. I mean, if it did, my father certainly didn't speak of it or write of it. I know I'm pointing a lot of little quibbles out. That doesn't mean that I don't like Part 9. I think I've articulated that, but I mean, come on, I'm just too close to this. There's no way. I mean, do a 10-part miniseries on a member of your family. I'm sure there are going to be things you wish they would do differently.
Uh-huh.
And tragically, the Ham character gets killed. But there is something interesting you see here in just a few seconds. Of course, Snafu's pulling Sledge back because he's protecting Sledge, and now...
Hey! You're okay, Frank? What the fuck happened? Ham's dead. And Peck's gone.
Oh, that line is delivered with such weight. Ham's dead, Peck's gone.
And the lieutenant doesn't even question it. He's like, you two, get him out of here. I mean, Sledge is a veteran, Snafu's a veteran, their opinions carry the day. And the lieutenant sees that, and he's like, okay, this guy screwed up for the last time, get him out of there. I mean, that's the way I interpret that.
And as Snafu is clenching the poncho, you wonder what's going in his mind. If I had treated him or nurtured this man more differently, would he have not snapped? Would he have done that stupid thing? Would Ham be alive? These are all the hypotheticals of war that can play hell with people's emotions.
Yeah. I remember in conversations with Bruce and company, with Bruce McKenna, when they were working on all this, and with my father being the kind of guy who had a sensitivity about him, who keenly felt the suffering of others. I remember asking Bruce, I'm like, look, man, you guys aren't going to make him out to be a softy or a wimp, are you? And I remember Bruce telling me that there's going to be no mistaking that Sledgehammer has a core of steel, and you will see that very evidently on Okinawa. And here you almost get the sound has almost got an echo effect to it, almost like it's ethereal, like dream-like or nightmare-like. I almost get the feeling in this scene that it's just like this dark netherworld that's a complete erosion of any decent human behavior.
With the flamethrower, it has a Dante's Inferno vibe to it, and
the flamethrower has that breathing sound like a dragon, almost, and it's. I mean, it's just, yeah, Dante's Inferno, and it's just one hellish scene, you know. And of course, Sledge is at the apogee, if that's the correct term, for the peak of his character arc. I mean, he is a hardened veteran. He is racking rounds and doing his job, you know, without mercy. And now we're about to see a scene that Bruce McKenna and I spoke of quite a bit.
Might be a trap.
So they took a little, this is from something that actually happened with the old breed. They took a little license here. Bruce McKenna and I discussing this, and he described to me, I'll let the scene play out before I say any more. Well, so here we see the scene with the crying baby, the dying woman. That was the part where they were going through a village. My dad pushed the door open on a hut, went in. There was an old woman there who beckoned him. He went over to her. She took the barrel of his Tommy gun and put it to her head and motioned for him to pull the trigger because she had been wounded in the abdomen, grievously so. As we see here, she was asking him to put her out of her misery. He recoiled in horror, as we know from the book, and goes outside to get a corpsman. Well, when he does that, he hears an M1 rifle shot. He looks back, and a Marine was coming out lighting a cigarette, and he comes back with a corpsman who was going to help because he had just gotten one, and says, "What the hell just happened? There was nobody in there. I just checked." The guy very callously says, "An old woman wanted me to put her out of her misery, and, you know, so I obliged her." And then my father cusses him out, and the corpsman cusses him out, says, "I'm going to put you on report," or something. But it was an example of the callousness that men could descend to, but they, of course, don't film it that way here. They do it a little bit differently, and Bruce described what they were going to do, or what they did, because we talked about it after the scene was shot. And I was a little, you know, I was like, why didn't you just do it the way it was written? And he said, well, we felt like we had not done an adequate job of conveying Sledge's humanity to this point. And so we felt like doing it this way put more emphasis on that aspect of his character, his humanity. I think it's a very powerful scene. Mm-hmm. I'm not, you know, taking umbrage with it. It's a very powerful scene, any way you take it. I'm just merely pointing out the things I know to point out because I had conversations with the creators and the writers.
I think here's as good a place as any to mention the little cup that you have, since Shuri isn't shown directly in the series.
This is a sake cup that my father picked up in the ruins of Shuri Castle when K-35 went through there. It was just lying in the rubble, mm-hmm. and you want me to show that as well?
It's amazing, as delicate an item as it is, that it survived.
Yeah, I mean, in that rubble, I mean, it really is. This is a Japanese samurai saber that my father also picked up when K-35 moved through the ruins of Shuri Castle. I've had a lot of people look at this thing and they just drool over it. It is not, as samurai sabers go, now you see tape around the handle. That's because the handle was broken over the years. I put the tape on there. I know that's not correct, so I don't need to get flamed for that. But it does not have a jewel in the hilt. This is not, you know, some ridiculously expensive example. And I don't care. It means everything to me because my dad brought it home from the ruins of Shuri Castle.
Yeah.
And, you know, for me, it's
the story that makes it valuable, not the ornamentation.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So
thank you for sharing.
You know, I think to the point of they felt they hadn't done a good job of portraying Sledge's humanity. I mean, we've seen that he is, as he was at the end of Peleliu, but probably even because this stuff just had a cumulative debilitating effect on a man's psyche. I mean, here's a young guy who's very close to being psychologically shattered and scarred, and has veered again to just the brink of losing any semblance of decency, and yet he catches himself at that last possible moment.
Find anything?
No.
Bruce told me, because I asked him, I said, Bruce, were there cut scenes? Is there an editor's cut of the Pacific out there with cut scenes? And he indicated there really wasn't, but he said, man, I will tell you right here. He described this point. He said, Sledge comes out of that hut and just sits down, and Snafu sits by him and just puts his arm around him. He said it was beautiful. He said it was one of my favorite scenes in the whole thing, and they cut it.
All right, let's get these boots squared away. Where's Bergie?
And this is another example of the hardened veteran who, in just a split second sees that this is just a scared kid rather than a threatening Japanese soldier. And then there's that. And that actually happened. I mean, as you know, you've read with the old breed.
Huh? Killing your first Jap?
He's a damn kid.
What's your problem? He's a Jap. We're here to kill Japs, ain't we?
And what I always find so striking about it is that when Sledge confronts him, the killer uses the exact same words that Sledge himself said earlier. We're here to kill Japs, ain't we?
Yeah.
And the words are his own words are literally thrown back in his face to justify this killing of a young unarmed combatant.
But the Sledge character has retained a veneer of that decency.
Yeah.
When I sit here and I talk about this, man, it really just touches me so much. I mean, I'm like on the brink of, becoming teary-eyed when I think about my dad and the kind of person he was. And there's so many examples of where he showed tenderness and compassion to animals, our dogs, to maybe a bird that flew into a window and got hurt. It's just, he had that element of compassion that a lot of people don't have. And yet he was a guy who could take another life.
Dropped some kind of new bomb on the Jap mainland.
Don't that be all?
Oh, no, this one's different. Vaporized an entire city in the blink of an eye.
The scene with Lieutenant Mack describing the atomic bomb is interesting because a side bit of trivia is that the actor portraying him, an Australian actor by the name of Ashley Zuckerman, was one of the lead characters in the drama series entitled Manhattan, which was actually about the development of the atomic bomb. And so in another Hollywood universe, his character is out in the desert developing the very atomic weapon that his character is describing here.
Did not know that. That is interesting. And the way this scene closes, or the way this whole thing closes out, is we see a portending of what's to come when you see those B-29s fly over. And then a great portrayal of the naval might off the shores. But that's a great shot there, both for the B-29s, but also you get a sense of the grassy plains, the wide open vistas of Okinawa.
And just the magnitude of the war. We see the Navy, we see the Marines, we see the Air Forces
Everybody's
overhead.
there.
Yeah, what an ending. So what were your thoughts when you first saw this episode?
I thought the combat scenes were, the cinematography from that standpoint, the combat scenes were just incredibly powerful. I like Part 9 a lot. I know I pointed out little quibbles here and there, but again, that's just, I'm so damn close to all of this. I mean, it's, I can't help but point little.
No one will begrudge you for being close to the story.
Yeah. But despite my little, like, okay, why didn't they call him Sledgehammer more here? I mean, come on. I mean, that's just. But yeah, I mean, I thought Part 9 was really powerful. I remember our friend Kirk Sadusky telling us when I think either Tom Hanks or somebody who read the scripts for Part 9 just thought it was superb. And just a really powerful episode. I really wish, and I do think originally that it was intended that Okinawa was going to occupy more than just one episode. But again, at the end of the day, man, the accountants rule everything.
Indeed. Andy, any questions you can think of that we should ponder over?
Is the lighter still around?
I do not know.
Yeah.
Lost to the, as one might say, lost to the sands of time. I'm not sure. I would have to do a quick dive back into my dad's book because I'm not even sure that might have been an artistic license thing in the miniseries. I can't remember if Haney actually gave a lighter to my dad. I do know that they talked after Peleliu, which we've already mentioned, but I don't know. That's not something that I have in my possession.
Well, the one thing that always strikes me in regard to this episode, despite all the gruesome horror and violence, at the end, we also truly get a sense of the beauty of friendship and camaraderie. And author Donald Miller has said on more than one occasion that war is the embodiment of hate, but war can also not be waged without love. And that is the love and the camaraderie that combatants share for one another. And we certainly see that on full display as we head into the final episode of the series.
Absolutely.
That covers everything for this episode as we analyze episode 9 of The Pacific. Henry, thank you so much once again.
You're welcome.
We're going around to the final chapter here.
I'm about
straight
to make
ahead.
it home.
Yep. Stay tuned for more great analysis as we reach the finale of The Pacific. We'll see you next time.